Hey there, folks. My name is Celia, and this story happened not too long ago when I just turned 39. Hold on to your hats because it's a wild ride, and trust me, you're going to need some popcorn for this one. Maybe some tissues if you find my story sad as well. Now, let me tell you about my mother-in-law, Vita. She's a special case, and if you've ever dealt with a tricky mother-in-law, you'll get where I'm coming from. And considering we were even living together, yeah, that just cranked our arguments up to 11. I never expected my life to turn out this way, but hey, love makes us do crazy things, right? So rewind to the good old days when I met my late husband, Javier. Picture this, I'm in Cuba on a girls' trip with some friends. Now, my friend, let's call her Jenny, had this brilliant idea to drive there using another friend's car. We were skeptical, of course, but she was telling us it was okay because she had spent some of her childhood in Cuba and she remembered the roads and that she could drive and take us around Havana. The rest of us were obviously side-eyeing her, but she managed to convince us because we were all a bit too tipsy to be making wise decisions. Well, we ended up getting a flat tire, and we were stranded because we didn't know where we were. Luckily, there was a little club not too far from where we stopped, and we managed to make our way there just to ask for some help. So there we were, gallivanting around town like the tipsy tourists we were, and that's when my life changed. It all happened so fast. I locked eyes with Javier across the crowded salsa club. Cue the romantic music, folks, because we hit it off and we started dancing the night away, and I was thinking, wow, Cuba just became my new favorite place. Long story short, Javier and I fell head over heels, and I ended up extending my stay just so that I could get to know Javier a bit better. You would think that I'd be a bit smarter than that, but at 23, in a new place with beautiful people, there wasn't much I could do to stop myself from falling so fast. I stayed in Cuba for a month longer, getting to know Javier and his beautiful culture. I even met some of his cousins and aunties, and they loved me. I definitely felt like my life was changing, and every time I was with Javier, it was like I was floating. I would visit Havana more often as the months went by. I'd even go as far as borrowing money from my parents so that I could meet him, and it was worth it every single time. Javier just got me in a way that nobody else ever did, and I knew that I was dealing with someone special. I've never felt this way before. It makes me feel so happy. Honestly, Javier, I don't know what you did to me, and I never thought I'd say this, but I'm so glad that we got that flat tire that day. Please, Celia, move to Cuba. Come and stay with me. Oh, Javier, how could I leave my life behind? I mean, everything I know is back in Virginia. What will my family say, my friends? Celia, you can visit them any time you want to. I'll make sure that you never miss home. But I need you here, and I need you in my life. Please consider it. I'll give you anything and everything you'll ever want. I want to make you happy. Oh, my love, you already make me happy. So just imagine how much happier we'll be if we're together all the time. We've only been dating for 6 months, Javier. When you know, Celia. And I know that this is real. I really want you in my life, Celia. Please. You have to move here. I'll think about it. I contemplated this for a while. A while being like 2 months. And all of my friends and family members were of course upset at me for potentially leaving, but they were also happy for me. They said that I needed to follow my heart and be true to myself. So if I wanted to move to Cuba, I had every right to do that. After thinking about it some more, I made my decision. Next thing you know, I'm packing my bags to move to the land of salsa and sunshine. Of course, Javier was over the moon, and as scary as it was, I loved the move to Cuba. It was out of my comfort zone, and I believe it needed to happen so that I could mold myself into a better me. Moving in with Javier was a whole new world, let me tell you. Weird, but I welcomed the experience with open arms because, well, life's all about new adventures, right? So when I was planning on moving in with Javier, he spilled the beans about his mom, Vita, living with him. Apparently, she would get sick often, so Javier had her move in with him to keep an eye on her. But at the same time, it wasn't uncommon for kids to live with their parents on that side of the world. I was cool with that, prepping myself for the whole family living arrangement. This was going to be my first time meeting Vita. We couldn't meet before when I visited Cuba because she was out there doing some missionary work in some of the rural areas. Our schedules just never matched up. I wasn't complaining too much because meeting in-laws is always nerve-wracking. But this time we were going to see each other, of course, and let me tell you, I was so freaking nervous. The car ride from the airport to Javier's place felt like I had an anchor in my stomach and a lump in my throat. It was so scary. When Javier and I arrived, Vita was surprisingly nice. She helped with my bags, teaching me some Spanish and lucum while we were unpacking and just being sweet in general. My worries were melting away and I was starting to think that everything was going to work out. Living together for a couple of weeks and oh boy, the cracks were starting to show. We'd start with these little tiffs, small disagreements about how to run the household. Sure, I was letting Vita take the reins because, hey, it was her son's house after all. But when it came to my turn to cook or clean, she'd always find something to complain about. My skills were under constant scrutiny. Javier, God bless him, would just laugh it off, trying to lighten the mood. But let me tell you, things were starting to spiral out of control faster than a kid on a merry-go-round. Hold on tight, because this story is about to take a nosedive into mother-in-law madness. Sure, I was letting Vita take the reins because, hey, it was her son's house after all. But when it came to my turn to cook or clean, she'd always find something to complain about. My skills were under constant scrutiny, and I felt like I had to walk on eggshells. Javier would just laugh it off, trying to lighten the mood between us all, because he never worried about half of the things that I did. But let me tell you, things were starting to spiral out of control faster than a kid on a merry-go-round. I was trying to keep it cool, but deep down I could feel the tension building up like a volcano about to erupt. One day she came up to me when Javier was at work and she said, "I'm sure Javier hasn't told you." "Told me what?" "Of course he didn't tell you. I've been thinking maybe it might be better if you move out." "What? Why?" "Because we didn't feel like you are a great fit here, at least for now." "Does Javier feel the same? Or is it just you? I've been patient with you, but I can't take it anymore. You're just too different." "But I'm learning, Vita. I love you and Javier, and I want to be here. Please." "Okay, but just do better, okay?" "To be completely honest with you, Vita, I'm not even sure what I'm doing wrong. You complain about my cooking or my cleaning, but what exactly is the issue?" Well, it's hard to explain." "Well, until you find the words, I'll continue to do my best here, okay? Maybe we just need to get to know each other better. I know that living with people can be a big adjustment, but I can assure you that as long as we work together, everything will be fine." "Yeah, all right." "So are we good? Do I still need to move out?" "We'll see about that." Now, I'm not one to stir the pot, but Vita and I, let's just say that after that conversation, we weren't exactly exchanging cookie recipes. I tried to be cordial and even forgiving, but she wouldn't let up. It actually seemed like her complaints were getting worse and worse as the months went by, and I was beginning to get fed up. Now, you might be wondering if I talked to Javier about all of this and spilled the tea on his mom's antics. Honestly, I hesitated. I mean, what if he took her side? It was a sticky situation, to say the least, and I didn't feel comfortable speaking ill about my boyfriend's mom. It wasn't going to be a good look, you know. But then it hit me. I needed to speak up for myself if I was going to survive this living arrangement with Javier. So I geared up to have a talk the day I planned to spill the beans about how uncomfortable I was. But hold up, plot twist. Javier decides to propose to me on that very day. Shocked? You bet. But I said yes, of course, because, well, I love the guy. And that evening, Javier surprised his mother with the big news, and let me tell you, she was less than thrilled. Javier, being the oblivious sweetheart he is, didn't notice, but I could see the subtle signs of her being peeved. I decided to keep my trap shut a bit longer. I mean, how could I rain on the parade when we were over the moon about getting married? Fast forward a couple of months and we tied the knot a little bit after I turned 25. Things between my mother-in-law and me got weirder though. I could sense she was starting to resent me, but she kept it under wraps, maybe some modicum of respect for me as her daughter-in-law. I don't know. Or perhaps she didn't want to be too hostile and risk Javier noticing. It was like walking on a tightrope, and I was bracing for the inevitable fall. Things took a nosedive when Javier wasn't around. When he was on a work trip or off golfing with his buddies, Vita would unleash her true colors. She went as far as yelling at me a couple of times. But the moment I called her out on her disrespect, oh boy, she'd backtrack like a pro. Suddenly, I'm the dramatic one, or it's all blamed on her stress. I couldn't take it anymore. I was reaching my boiling point, folks. It was time for a heart-to-heart with my husband, and at that point, I couldn't care less if he thought I was being rude or disrespectful towards his mom. Sometimes you just gotta let the truth spill out like knocking over a bottle of ketchup. Messy but necessary. Stay tuned, 'cause the confrontation's about to unfold, and you won't believe the drama that unfolds in our little Cuban casa. Babe, I need to talk to you about something serious. What's wrong, my love? It's your mom. My mom? What happened? Well, I've been meaning to talk to you about this, actually, but I always hesitated because I didn't know how you'd react. But she hasn't been kind to me. Really? Is it about your cooking? You know, she's just teasing, babe. I'll admit she can be a bit catty, but her heart's in the right place, I swear. Javier, just a couple of days ago she yelled at me all because I used the blue duster instead of the red one. Yelled at you? Because of a duster? She said something about how the blue duster had sentimental value or something. I don't know. It was all so weird and confusing. She speaks to me like I'm a little kid. Are you sure, Celia? What if you're just misinterpreting her because of the language barrier? My Spanish and my lucum has been getting better and better. Language has nothing to do with it. I'm telling you, babe, you don't see how she acts when you're not here. That is unbelievable. I can't imagine. Why would she treat you that way? I don't know. I'll talk to her. Please, don't make it seem like I hate her or anything. I feel like there's a deeper reason, you know. She complains about everything, and it's just exhausting keeping up with her expectations. Don't you worry, my love. Javier marched off to talk to his mom, and I could hear the muffled sounds of their argument in the next room. It was like a soap opera unfolding live in our casa. Things were getting pretty heated, and when Javier stormed back into the room, he looked angrier than a bull in a china shop. I cautiously asked him what was wrong, bracing myself for the fallout. He started ranting, unleashing a whole spiel about how he had no idea his mom was this stubborn, and just downright mean. It was like the curtain had been lifted and the reality of his mom's behavior was hitting him like a ton of bricks. She said such awful things. I don't even know what to say. What did she say? A bunch of things I don't care much to repeat. Honestly, wow. You see what I was talking about? I don't know. She said she wanted you out of the house and she's saying that she doesn't want us to be married anymore. What? She said she doesn't care about you anymore since you snitched to me. That's not fair. I was just talking to you. That is what I was afraid of. No, Celia, don't be scared. You did nothing wrong. What if she continues to treat me like this, and what will happen when you're not home? Babe, trust me. As long as I'm around, I won't let her do anything. I don't know what's come over her, but actually, maybe I do. I asked Javier what he meant by that, and he sighed and began to spill the beans. Turns out his mom was going through a lot financially, and her health issues weren't the only reason she moved in with him all those years ago. Brace yourself, because this revelation was a game changer. Apparently, Vita used to be a bit of a gambler back in the day, and one night, as most addicts do, she got a bit too cocky and ended up blowing her life savings on a bet that went south. She was devastated, and maybe that's what turned her so bitter. Now she's projecting her issues onto me. Javier dropped the bomb that she was in serious debt and he was working on paying it off, and that he had managed to pay off most of it as the years went by, but what was left was still a hefty sum, about $9,000 left. Now it was all starting to make sense. She was just a hurting old lady, probably feeling rejected because her son was moving on with his life and had a wife to care for. She was no longer the only woman in his life, and I guess she wasn't handling it well. I softened a bit, feeling bad for her. She was going through a lot already with her health and the debt. It must have been awful. Although I softened, Javier was more pissed than I was. His argument was that she needed to be more appreciative and had to respect me as her daughter-in-law because this was not fair. I did everything for her, and the moment I feel happy, the moment I fall in love, she acts like this. Javier, I'm so sorry. She's never spoken to me that way before. I'm still shocked. I tried keeping this from you to save her from the embarrassment, of course, but I don't know what's gotten into her. It's okay, Javier. Like you said, she's going through a lot. Now that I know all of this, I'm sure I'll be able to handle her outbursts. It's not right. She's a grown woman. She's able to control her actions. Don't make excuses for her. Let's just give her some time to cool off, yeah? Maybe we could rehash this discussion when we've calmed down a bit. You're right. I'm just hurt, you know? I understand, babe. I love you. Thank you for standing up for me and for telling me that. I know it wasn't easy. Thanks, babe. The household after that revelation was super awkward, to say the least. Awkwardness hung in the air like a thick fog for the better part of the next 13 years. Yeah, I know, it's a ridiculously long time, but it just goes to show what happens when we hold on to our anger. Javier remained angry with his mom whenever she treated me poorly, and developed a hypersensitivity to it even. When my mother-in-law tried to say something rude, he'd lash out at her, yelling in front of me. This just fueled her anger towards me even more. It was a toxic cycle, and most times it felt like Javier and I were living with a toxic housemate, not an actual relative. Javier dropped a bomb on me a couple of years ago. He had stopped paying his mother's debt. I was shocked. Their relationship had been strained, and I guess that was the main reason. It was awful. I felt like things might get better if we moved to the States, maybe Virginia. I was missing my people, and we were all unhappy in Cuba. Unfortunately, I never got the chance to share this plan with Javier because something awful happened. One day, as I was coming home from the farmer's market, I got a call from Vita. For some reason, I immediately knew something was wrong. I had never heard Vita scream like that. She sounded like she was in pure pain. The news she delivered hit me like a ton of bricks. And suddenly, buying those mangoes at half price didn't matter anymore. Nothing did. She told me that Javier had gotten into a car accident and was pronounced dead at the scene. She said she was on her way to the site and that I needed to hurry. My world shattered. Apparently there was some drunk driver and he was trying to avoid, which made him swerve to the far right, causing a massive collision with the car next to him. The other people involved managed to escape with some injuries, but my husband lost his life. Life suddenly felt unbelievably unfair. I was heartbroken, and nothing has been the same ever since. Even though I was praying to the gods and hoping that this was a bad dream, it was unfortunately too real. Vita and I had this secret code where we just stood in silence. In the morgue, at the funeral, and even in the house, we were just silent. I mean, what would we say? It seemed like silence was the only thing overwhelming us. It was so awful how everything was crashing down, and the glue that held us together was no longer here. A couple of months went by, and I wasn't even able to celebrate my 39th birthday properly. I mean, how could I? I was depressed, and I didn't feel like celebrating anything because there was nothing to celebrate. Most days in the house were filled with silence, only talking when we had to get groceries or pay the electricity bill. I lost my lover and my best friend all too soon, and honestly, I was ready to move back home. Cuba seemed like a 15-year-long fever dream at that point, and I was ready to wake up and face the bitter truth of reality. But then I thought about my mother-in-law and how lonely she must have felt. And that's when I decided that all this drama, all of this beef needed to be left in the past. None of that compared to the pain of losing someone we both loved dearly. Life throws curveballs, and sometimes it feels like we're drowning in the storm. But if there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's that even in the midst of heartbreak and silence, there's room for forgiveness and understanding. You see, I decided to extend the olive branch, and it was a pretty hefty olive branch at that, because I decided to pay off her debt. Yeah, you heard that right. I was going to pay off that $9,000 so that perhaps she could see that I never hated her, and that I've always cared for her. I went through some of Javier's documents and files to get the details of the debt she owed, and surprised her with the news that she would now have a free conscience. After about a week or so, everything was settled and I had paid off all her debt. It felt super freeing, and I could just feel the healing start to work between us. So one day I brought her flowers and a note that told her the news, and I was anticipating her reaction. I was expecting her to jump for joy or even cry. But I wasn't expecting her to be angry. "How could you do this?" What? What's going on? "I didn't ask you to do this." "Vita, there's no need to feel embarrassed. Javier told me everything and I just wanted to help." "You had no right to do that." "Maybe I didn't, but all we have is each other, right? Javier would be happy knowing that." "Stop saying his name. I don't want to hear that name. Do you think I want your pity money? When my own son refused to help me?" Vita, please, let's sit down and talk about this. I know you're hurting." "No, don't talk to me. I don't want to see your face." "Vita, please, calm down. I think it's time that you get out. You need to leave. This is not your home." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I've never wanted you here, and now that he's gone, you don't need to be here. Get out. Get all of your stuff and get out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I tried reasoning with her, but you can't reason with someone who is unreasonable. She kept yelling, and she started getting violent, throwing and breaking things, and at that moment I was just so overcome with sadness that I let her have it. I had no energy to fight her. Since I was planning on moving back home anyway, I decided that I would give my mother-in-law what she always wanted, her space. So I went upstairs, ignoring her insults, and began packing my things. I was obviously going to pack Javier's things as well. It seemed like her son was literally and figuratively dead to her. It was such a shame to see someone like that act that way, especially towards their kid. I was crying as I was ripping our closet apart, being angry at everyone and everything for the way that I was feeling, and I came across a little box I hadn't seen before. I opened it up, of course, and I got the shock of a lifetime. There was a letter from Javier, and the tears just burst out of me like a tap. The letter read, "My love, happy 40th birthday. I hope you enjoy your present. I've been planning this for years just so that you know how much I love you. I'm sorry for everything I've put you through with my mom, with anything else that has ever stressed you out. I love you. You are my everything. And I hope that you know that I would move mountains for you. I love you." Attached to the letter was the title deed to the house that we were living in, with my name written on it. Can you believe it? On top of that, he attached a check for $5,000, and attached was a sticky note that said, "Decorate the house however you want." I was shocked. I didn't even know what to say. I had to reread the letter, the deed, and the check. I was shaking. I thought that this was a joke, but it seemed to be legit. Why he had my 40th birthday planned out for this long, only the Lord knows, but it hit me like a ton of bricks. After gathering myself, I made my way back downstairs and confronted Vita. "Your things better be packed. I don't want to see you any more." I showed her the title deed, and she scanned it over with her angry eyes. When she realized what it was, her eyes went wide. She reread it, and I assured her that it was true and legit. She started yelling, and I calmly explained that I didn't even want to consider the deed. But she began cursing at me and saying some really vile things. I was now angry and completely fed up with her, so I yelled back for once and told her that I was taking the house and that she should leave. Oh boy, that's when she changed her tune real quick. She was now crying and begging me to help her. I told her that she should look for a new place since she was now debt-free, but she continued to beg and plead, telling me that she was sorry and that she wanted to rebuild our relationship. I told her that I was sick of her nonsense and that I didn't want her in my house. "How dare you? You're so selfish. Your name might be on the deed, but this is my house. If you want to bring that up with the police, that's fine, but in the meantime, I want you out of here, okay? Celia, you can't do this. Where will I go?" "I don't know. I don't care. I've had it up to here with you. You think you're the only one going through things? I guess you'll learn real quick to be a good person when you're sleeping on the streets." "Celia, please. I didn't mean any of those things I said. Really. For all those years you were lying? Well, Javier is probably rolling in his grave. You need to get your crap together, but do it outside of my house, please, and thank you." Vita tried to put up a fight, but eventually she left in a huff, even refusing to pack her things because she was so convinced that she would be back. Well, that didn't turn out to be the case because I sold the house. I didn't want to live there anymore. It smelled like Javier and I couldn't take it. So I put her belongings in a storage unit, sold the house, and made my way back to Virginia. The entire process took about a month or so to finalize, and I guess that was when Vita came with her crew and some family members to fight for the house back. But I was long gone by that time, and the house was now owned by someone else. She tried contacting me, cursing and yelling at me through Facebook and threatening to sue, but I blocked her and began to pick up the broken pieces of my life. I was done with her and her crap, and I'm glad I got my revenge.